So you must have heard from many people, or you may have read online forum, or you may have experienced it yourself, that Rotimatic works fine the first few times, but then slowly it kind of stops working, or it may not have worked from to begin with. So today we are going to show you inside Rotimatic and give you some tips about the machine, so you can also make perfect rotis each time.
So this is Rotimatic that has already been opened, and I'm just going to talk about how to open it fully, and also maybe some of the parts inside it. It's a very impressive machine, but also many people have had a lot of issues with it, just because it's a pretty complicated machine with a lot of moving parts, multiple motors, multiple sensors, fairly complex electronics, and of course the roti making itself is a pretty difficult process. So I'll just talk a little bit more about, hopefully it helps people to understand more about the machine, and also try to fix some issues.
First, let's see how Rotimatic works. Fill up flour, water, and oil and run the machine. Press play, and you can press plus or minus to make more or less rotis. It takes 6 minutes for machine to warm up. You can adjust thickness, roast level, and oil amount as per your preference. Machine will take all 3 ingredients and make a dough ball. An arm will push the ball to the flat surface where it will be pressed to make the roti, and the presser will cook it to perfection. Now let's open the machine and see how everything works.
So to open the machine, you mainly need three tools. One is T15 Torx. So T15 is what I'm using for the screws. You will also need a flat screwdriver to pry some of those kind of hooks, and ideally a plastic spatula or plastic tool of some kind to separate the various plastic parts without damaging. As you must know, this is the front display, which is where the roti comes out. But before that happens, you need to put the dough in here. So the dough attachment has two counter rotating things. One tip I would suggest is to don't leave the dough in there. Keep that thing clean, and dough should not be too packed or pressed down. Just make sure it is loose and both the parts, all of the parts inside can rotate easily, and the dough goes in through that hole that is in that. It's called dough canal. The water container, again I have found that the water container better to fill fresh water, warm water if possible, not hot but somewhat warm, and try to put fresh water every time. Oil, generally you can leave the oil as long as you are using the machine regularly, but don't leave the oil for too long, otherwise the oil may come up, and basically again the operation will be impacted. So make sure to, I think it's pretty somewhat difficult to keep the machine clean, but unless it is fully clean and everything is in a very clean condition, it's hard to use this machine. This is where the dough gets made. The platform is stationary. That's where the dough gets dispensed and water comes on top of it, and oil. and then it whole platform is inside into that container, and that's where it prepares a dough ball. So if the right amount of dough is dispensed and correct amount of water and oil comes in, then only it will be able to make a proper dough ball. So keeping this clean, and before using, make sure they're not wet, they're dry and clean. That is important. So this machine has already been opened, but to open, the very first thing is to go in the back, and there are 6 screws with the Torx head, 2 here, 2 in here, and then 5th and 6th over here. Plus there is a 7th screw underneath the machine. So all 7 needs to be removed fully before you try to open. And of course, just after you remove it will not open. The next thing to do would be to release these latches. And to do that, you can use a flathead screwdriver, push it through this hole, and then as you push it, something like a plastic piece in there to separate it. So go from this corner and proceed in this direction, and then at the bottom, and then this part should come out. Once it comes out, you can release the cable from the USB interface and from the power. Those two you can remove. The others, there's a fan cable also, but that cannot be removed until you can access the side. Once the back panel comes out, the next one you can take out is this one, and this is a useful part to take out because once you take it out, you will be able to see the tubes that feed water and oil into the dough making area, and sometimes they get clogged or develop some mold or something. So if you want to clean it, you need to at least be able to inspect it. They come from the 2 containers, but then they go through what is called as peristaltic pumps. You can see 2 DC motors in there. Those DC motors operate peristaltic pumps, 2 separate peristaltic pumps, one for oil, one for water. And these pumps are used in medical applications a lot. Here also it is like a food application. So the way it works is like it has a very soft tube, and it just presses on the tube to dispense the needed amount of water. So if you look at these tubes, they're like really soft. So these pumps will basically press on the tube to dispense some water and oil. This is the back side of the machine. After the back cover is kind of moved away, the fan is still connected, but I just moved that top back part away. You can clearly see the 2 motors, the power supply, and here you can see the pressing area for making the roti, for pressing the roti, and the arm that moves the roti to the front. It is operated by this DC motor with an encoder on it, so that it can keep track of where it is. So better not to move it by hand. You can also see different sensors, like for example there is a sensor limit switch here, and the shaft that you see there is for the pressing mechanism, which is operated by this large, I believe that is an AC motor. It rotates and uses gears to press that roti down firmly. So you can typically see some flour accumulation here. So if you do open it, you might be able to clean it and make sure it's free of any clogs or blockages. because sometimes the brush may not reach all the way there, back there. The side panel has another fan and a wireless connection, Wi-Fi connection module. And the Wi-Fi connection module is connected to a ribbon cable here, and the fan is connected using this cable. I did remove it, but it's a bit tricky operation, so be careful if you're trying to remove it. Once again, to remove this panel, there are screws underneath. So you will see a bunch of screws there, all with Torx head, and remove those. Once you remove those, then this panels will be able to separate. But you can see there are a bunch of latches like this. They need to be separated. In this case, there's no hole to press them. Also, just you have to nudge them out using some kind of a screwdriver, or preferably something made of softer material like plastic. This is the main circuit board. The power comes in here, so be careful to touch this area. Avoid connecting power while it is open. There is also a large capacitor which can store charge, so it can hurt if you touch it before it is discharged. So definitely do not touch anywhere. Generally, there is an LED that stays on while the capacitor is charged. So it will warn you, but still best to not plug it in. It has a processor, a microcontroller that you can see here, and a bunch of other parts. You can see the buzzer in there. You can see the Wi-Fi connection module connection, and you can see bunch of shafts for the front heating and pressing module. You can also see some tracks or other electronics in there which control the heating elements. The heating elements are with this heat protected cables, the white ones with the white connectors. There is a large relay in there and a bunch of other parts. So it's a fairly complicated and well designed machine. This is where we see the sensor for the flour. So sometimes there is some flour that has gone behind. So if that's the case, then you can open the screw and clean it. There is like a infrared LED and receiver to sense the flour. Once the flour goes below about halfway mark, top part of the flour container gets emptied, then it will basically start complaining the flour is out. The front panel is connected using that brown cable. LCD display is connected through there, and there's a driver for that, you can see. So removing the front panel is going to be more trickier and riskier. So best to not to avoid touch it. But at the same time, if you do need to do something about any of the parts that make the dough, then those are behind that part, that area. And to be able to access them, you may need to remove this LCD. But then there's risk that you may not be able to put it back properly and get the machine started. Two more sensors. There's one sensor here which is probably to confirm that this lid is closed, or maybe to confirm that the front panel is not been removed. And there's another sensor here that detects the side door. So I believe that's a Hall sensor, Hall effect sensor. The door has a magnet, and when the magnet comes close to that, it knows the door is closed. And we can also see the pressing motor here from the other side.
Hope this video was useful and gave you understanding of the machine. We were able to get the perfect wheat, jawar, bajra rotis and hope that you will be able to as well. Please post your comments or questions and we'll be happy to respond. Until next time, goodbye.